been allowed to happen and why nothing's been done about it. We got the chance to speak exclusively to the owner of one of those houses, whose house is right there, his garden backs right onto it. Here's what he had to say.
Well, down here, you've forgotten, the council ignore it. They just skirt around the edges of it, doing nothing. When they cleaned up the one in Oxfordshire, they said they're only cleaning that one up because it was a fire risk. This has already been on fire once. It cost over £500,000 to put the fire out, and it's going to happen again. So, but just by their own standards, I think they should clear it up. If it costs £3 million, it costs £3 million.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 10 a.m. on Saturday, the 7th of March. Live across the United Kingdom, this is Saturday Morning Live.
And some breaking news. Sower murderer Ian Huntley has died in hospital. It's understood he was taken to hospital after being attacked at HMP Frankland in Durham. More on this breaking story shortly.
It's 1 week on from the start of Operation Epic Fury, and American bombers have started to land at British bases. 3 more B-1 bombers have landed at RAF Fairford this morning.
Well, with protests expected outside RAF Fairford later today and a Stop the War march in London this afternoon, we're asking, why was the UK so slow to react? And when did the military offer plans to bolster our presence in the region?
And Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, he met with members of the Trump administration in Mar-a-Lago overnight. He gave a scathing review of the state of the special relationship.
I see very little prospect of the relationship between Starmer and Trump improving.
And this morning, the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, will accuse Labour of student politics over their response to the war in Iran, saying that today's Labour Party is nothing like the patriotic Labour Party of yesteryear. We'll bring that speech to you live later in the show.
And a new anti-Muslim hostility SAR and Islamophobia definition are set to be released by the government on Monday. Do we need either of those things?
Will the Prime Minister please assure us that the final terms of reference will reflect these concerns?
And some grooming gang victims are struggling to meet with the National Inquiry team as it prepares to finalise its terms of reference, GB News can disclose. Shadow Minister Katie Lamb raised the issue in the Commons this week. We'll get the latest. Biggest stories, boldest opinions and liveliest debates over the next 2 hours. I'm Olivia Utley.
And I'm Charlie Peters, and your weekend starts here.
So that huge breaking news that Ian Huntley has died in hospital. He was attacked recently in prison by a prisoner with a barbed metal pole and just taken off life support this morning. Obviously, it's hard to mourn the death of someone who murdered 2 girls so brutally.
Absolutely, Olivia. It'll be very interesting to see the reaction to that incident. There's violence in prisons. There's a bit of a debate cropping up already, I think, about the death penalty for people like Ian Huntley. Why do we, as a society, often say no to the death penalty, but then celebrate it, many people do, when someone is killed in prison? We'll be discussing that later as we get more reaction to the death of Ian Huntley, killed in prison after being taken off life support.
And would love to know what you think about that and everything else we're going to be talking about today, including Keir Starmer's reaction to the war in Iran. Did he just move too slowly when trying to keep backbenchers and left-wing potential Green voters on side? Send your views and post your comments, as always, by visiting gbnews.com/yoursay.
I know that the war has dominated so much coverage this week, but we've also got an exclusive report on the grooming gangs inquiry. The terms of reference consultation closed yesterday for members of the public, but some survivors have said, they've told GB News, that they're struggling to get in touch with the inquiry team. We'll have all the latest on that this hour.
Before we do anything else, Bethany Elsey has all your news headlines.
Charlie, Olivia, thank you. Good morning. Your top stories from the GB newsroom at 3 minutes past 10. And some breaking news. It's reported the SOA murderer Ian Huntley has died. Sources say his life support machine was switched off after brain tests showed he was in a vegetative state. He was taken to hospital after being attacked at HMP Frankland in Durham yesterday. Huntley was serving a life sentence with a minimum term of 40 years for the murders of 10-year-olds Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman in 2002. War in the Middle East has entered its second week, with President Donald Trump warning only Tehran's unconditional surrender will end the conflict. The White House has downplayed reports that Russia is sharing intelligence with Iran about US targets, saying it's not making a difference as its military have struck over 3,000 targets. There's heavy smoke and fire at Iran's busy Mehrabad airport as Israel, Iran and Lebanon continue to exchange fire. Meanwhile, a second government-chartered flight carrying British citizens from Oman landed at Gatwick this morning, with more flights to be announced over the coming days. More than 160,000 Britons in the region have registered their presence with the Foreign Office. The Chief of Defence Staff, Sir Richard Knighton, says as the war escalates, all options are under review.
There's been a close relationship between Russia and Iran over many years. We've seen that Russia has been using Iranian technology in drones, for example, against Ukraine. And I have no doubt that what Russia has been learning is being passed back to Iran. This is an axis of evil, and we need to call it out. These campaigns and conflicts evolve over time, and we will keep all options under review. But right now, my focus is on protecting our interests and our people right across the region.
Canada's Prime Minister says Andrew Mountbatten Windsor should be removed from the royal line of succession. Speaking to reporters in Tokyo, Mark Carney says the former prince's actions are deplorable and it's necessary he be removed as eighth in line to the throne. The British government is considering the move after he was arrested last month on suspicion of misconduct in a public office. Andrew has always denied any wrongdoing over his links to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, but has not directly responded to these latest allegations. You're up to date. Let's get back to Olivia and Charlie.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB Digital Radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Well, thank you, Bethany, and welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with Charlie Peters and me, Olivia Utley.
Let's go back to that breaking news now. The Soham killer, Ian Huntley, has died in hospital after he was attacked in the workshop of the maximum security Frankland prison in County Durham by an inmate with a metal bar on February the 26th.
Yes, his life support machine was turned off last night. I mean, huge news here. We have been expecting this since the life support machine was turned off last night. As you say, Charlie, a bit of a debate going on now about, natural justice, can you call it in prison? Vigilante justice?
And first and foremost, I mean, our thoughts, Olivia, they will definitely be with the families of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, those best friends who were killed by Ian Huntley, because any reference to this barbaric man will revitalise those horrible memories, those horrible feelings they have of those, what must have been gut-wrenching days in 2002. But we can now bring in our national reporter, Will Godley, who joins us in the studio. Will, what can you tell us about this incident?
Well, we've just in the last minute or so had a statement from Durham Constabulary. They have said a man who was attacked at HMP Frankland in Durham last week has died in hospital this morning. Ian Huntley, 52 years old, was taken to hospital with serious injuries following an incident in the workshop on the morning of Thursday, 26th of February. A police investigation into the circumstances of the incident is ongoing. A file is being prepared for the Crown Prosecution Service for consideration of charges. Of course, it was widely reported that attack just over 10 days ago now in the workshop of that high-security prison, HMP Frankland, when Ian Huntley, of course, 52-year-old man, was attacked with a spike And according to The Sun, his head split in two. He was left unrecognisable, and paramedics there found him barely breathing and covered in blood. He was, of course, airlifted then to hospital. We know he was on life support, and that life support then turned off. This isn't, of course, the first time he was attacked in hospital. Of course, due to the nature of his horrific crimes, he was a widespread target for attacks. Back in 2010, he underwent emergency surgery after his throat was cut from a homemade weapon. And in 2005 as well, an inmate threw boiling water over Huntley as well in a prison in West Yorks. But this morning, Durham Constabulary confirming he's died after his life support turned off.
And well, we have a statement we can bring you now from the Ministry of Justice. A spokesperson there has said the murders of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman remains one of the most shocking and devastating cases in our nation's history, and our thoughts are with their families. And Will, you've just spoken about the previous attacks Ian Huntley faced in prison, his throat being cut with a homemade weapon in 2010. There will also be serious questions for the prison authorities about their internal security, about how they manage to keep prisoners safe and how attacks like this have been able to happen.
Absolutely. It's not the first attack that's happened in prisons over the last few years. There have, of course, been some very high-profile ones, and HMP Frankland is a very high-security prison where this attack happened, at the workshop, of course, where prisoners would have had access to things that could be used as weapons. And we understand a man in his 40s has been identified, a prisoner there also at the prison, has been identified in connection with this ambush. Police not saying yet that he's been arrested. They're working on putting a charge file together for the CPS to consider charges here. But, of course, he was a very high target for his crimes. Of course, a horrific attack back in 2002 for murdering two best friends, two 10-year-old girls, Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman. In the summer of 2002, they were at a family barbecue, of course, were leaving that family barbecue on their way to go and buy sweets when the local school caretaker lured those two girls into his home, murdered them, and their bodies then found some 2 weeks later in a ditch 10 miles away, before Ian Huntley was later arrested in connection to this and arrested for what was an absolutely horrific crime. Front page news over 20 years ago. And I don't think anyone today, of course, will be mourning this man.
Well, thank you very much, Will, and we'll hope to hear more from you on this breaking story throughout the programme. I so remember the murders of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman. I was exactly the same age as them at the time, and it was just the most horrific, horrible story. And I'd just like to echo Charlie's sentiments that if any of their families are watching this today, our thoughts are with you.
And many of you have been getting in touch, gbnews.com/your say. David Young says, may the two girls now rest in peace. God bless them. Right, it's 12 minutes past 10. Now let's move on now to our top story, because the US President Donald Trump has announced that American defence contractors have agreed to quadruple the supply of military weapons being used in Iran, adding that he'll accept nothing but unconditional surrender.
But what of the British military response? The Prime Minister has agreed to send 4 additional Typhoon jets to Qatar, plus 2 helicopters and a destroyer will be sent to Cyprus. But HMS Dragon remains docked in Portsmouth.
So this morning we're asking, why was Britain so slow to react, and when did the military offer plans to the government to bolster our presence in the region? Well, this morning we've heard from the Chief of the Defence Staff, the professional head of the Armed Forces, Sir Richard Knighton, who has defended the British response.
For several weeks now, we've been bolstering our presence and the forces in the Middle East, particularly at Cyprus, and doing that in consultation with our regional partners. We've added additional Typhoons, F-35, over 400 people to help protect and defend the airspace around Cyprus. And even as late as Wednesday, Thursday, before the war started, Donald Trump was talking about a peaceful resolution. When the war started on Saturday, it became clear over the next 48 hours that Iran's response was going to be very much broader, wild and indiscriminate.
Well, the former defence attaché in Moscow and Kyiv, John Foreman, joins us now. Good morning to you, John. Thank you very much for being with us on Saturday Morning Live. I just want to get your reaction to those comments from Richard Knighton. From where I'm sitting, it seems to me that he is being sent out to defend the government more than the military, who surely would have put forward plans to the Prime Minister to bolster our presence ahead of this rushed reaction we've seen since the war started.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a concerted government campaign of spin over the last few days to recapture the narrative. I think we saw that with the Prime Minister's hasty press conference. I think we saw it with Al Khan's coming out and John Healey going to Cyprus, and now the Chief of Defence Staff has come out. He's a loyal man. He's served in the military a long time, and that his job is to basically be the head of the armed forces and that interface between the military and the political levels. So I'm not surprised he's on message. But I think it's clear to say that our military response has been undercooked and it has been tardy. And I think that there's been a lot of time this week, people scrabbling to catch up, which a lot of its problems could have been solved by perhaps warming the bell and doing this weeks, if not months ago, to be fully prepared.
And why is it that HMS Dragon still hasn't been deployed and won't be for another, possibly a week, possibly a fortnight? I was in a meeting with the Prime Minister's spokesman yesterday, and he said it just takes a long time because you need to stock up the ship because it will be going for perhaps many weeks, possibly months. Is that a good enough excuse? As you say, couldn't they have prepared for this earlier?
Well, I mean, I think obviously the deployment of the ship is a political decision, and I'm sure the Navy, as we've seen reporting in The Spectator this week, gave options to the government beforehand. But I think the overall strategy of the government was to lean out and try and not lean in, to sit this out, to try and do the bare minimum and hope the war wouldn't come to Britain. Unfortunately, the war was interested in Britain, and actually now we're trying to react. I mean, I think on the Navy, I would say on the ship in particular, I know this weekend, men and women, civilian and military, government personnel and contractors are all working very, very hard to get that ship out to sea. But it does take time because the ship was in dock, and you need to get the missiles on board, you need to get the guns ready, you need to get the systems which have been checked in place, you need to get stores and spares. You also need to prepare the crew for potential scenarios out there on the warfare side. It's not just a platform, it's actually a fighting platform. So the Navy is doing everything it can to get the ship to sea, just as they did to get those 2 helicopters out to Cyprus to improve defences out there. So it does take time, but of course, if the decision had been taken a month ago, the ship will be out.
Yeah, and John, just looking at this more broadly, our wider stance about allowing US bombers to now use British air bases for what the Prime Minister is insisting is defensive operations. We've now seen plenty of B-1 bombers landing at RAF Fairford this morning. When you look at that beast of a plane, it doesn't look particularly defensive to me. How will that play out? You've been at the highest level of military and government discussions on how these sorts of plans are made. How will that play out with British legal advisors speaking to American commanders, advising them on what strikes are permissible from British air bases? Do you think that stance from the Prime Minister can hold?
Well, I used to work in the Pentagon as well, and I know that there will have been extensive discussions about what we call caveats. What caveats have been placed on those aircraft operating at British bases that those aircraft can and can't do. I think the Prime Minister in his press conference was dancing on the head of a legal pin, trying to say that we gave the permission when the wording of the exact request came in. But I think there have been weeks beforehand when the first request came in early February to say, can we use your bases? And then they went backwards and forth. So I think if we zoom out, I think the long-term consequences of delays in providing Americans with permission to operate from our bases against certain targets, in terms of the use of Diego Garcia, the impact on our reputation in the Gulf and with allies in Cyprus, and a sort of general reputational damage to Britain in Europe, while Europe is now sending ships and submarines and things out to the east of the Mediterranean. The British seem to be behind the curve. So it's not just about the ships and the aircraft and the actual operational details. It's also political and diplomatic problems as well.
It certainly is very political indeed. Former Defence Attaché for Moscow and Kyiv, John Foreman, thank you so much for speaking to us this morning on Saturday Morning Live.
Right, we've got some breaking news to bring you this morning because Iran has apologised for the strikes it's launched on neighbouring countries, that's the Gulf countries nearby, saying it was down to a miscommunication issue.
Yes, the Iranian president said that from now on they should not attack neighbouring countries or fire missiles at them unless we are attacked by those countries. I think we should solve this problem through diplomacy. Well, a special correspondent at the Daily Mail, David Patrikarakos, joins us now. Interesting comment from the Iranian president there. Well, on the other side, you've got Donald Trump seemingly abandoning all talks of diplomatic conversations and saying that he will only accept unconditional surrender from Iran. What's your reaction to those comments?
Well, look, from the Iranians, I mean, it's surprising, but also at the same time entirely logical. It never made any strategic sense to me to do what they did. I know that they were calculating that by striking UAE, Oman, all of their Gulf neighbours, that they would bring pressure to bear on the Americans to ramp things down. The opposite happened. The Emiratis, for example, were furious. All they did was drive their neighbours into the arms of the United States. And you know, the UAE, for example, is so important to Iran economically. It does so much of its sanctions busting through there. It was completely insane. Now, my understanding from people inside Iran is that Iranian command and control was utterly degraded in the wake of the decapitation of its leadership. But nonetheless, it was a cretinously stupid thing to do. And I guess, even though the Islamic Republic generally isn't into apologising, it makes sense. They want to try and dampen this down right now. In terms of what Donald Trump said, I think diplomatically and politically it's foolish to box yourself into a corner like that. And if it were any other leader, I would worry that he has boxed himself into a corner. But Donald Trump may just completely forget about what he tweeted or posted and move on. So I'm not overly worried about that. It was more of Trump just essentially mouthing off without thinking, I think.
David, as we're seeing these military strikes progress and we're getting hourly updates from the IDF on the number of strikes they say that they've conducted, the number of commanders they've killed, what assessment do you have on how much command people like the Iranian president will have over their armed forces and indeed the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the more fanatical wing of the Iranian military? Is there a possibility that for all his "I'm sorry for bombing you" messages to the Gulf, that he actually won't have as much of a grip on those people firing those drones and missiles, that they'll be increasingly acting in a sort of existential and desperate manner, firing at whoever they want to?
Look, this is always possible. I would say right now, I think the man in charge is Ali Larijani, the Secretary of the National Security Council. He's the top security official. He seems to have survived. Certainly his ex-account is tweeting defiance, but then so is Khamenei, and he's definitely dead. I'm hearing that there is confusion on the ground, that the IRGC is moving to fill the space in many areas, much to the chagrin of other forces. As you rightly point out, there are two main military structures in Iran. There's the Artesh, the armed forces, and of course the Revolutionary Guard, that more fanatical, more elite organisation that was set up in the aftermath of the Islamic Revolution to, and I quote, defend the revolution. We should point out that the Revolutionary Guard has long ceased to be a simply military outfit. It's essentially a conglomerate. It's in all of Iran's major industries: oil, the auto sector. It's one of the main channels of its wealth is sanction busting. It's an entity now. The more that the Iranian Central Command is hammered, the more the potential for the type of things that you're talking about, the more for the potential for lone actors to do things on their own or simply because of internal miscommunications. All of this, of course, only raises the threat levels, not just to Israel and America, but to Iran's Gulf neighbours if the regime starts to fracture. Right now, we're not seeing any internal uprisings. I'm in contact with people in Iran every day. They are being terrorized off the streets. The regime has also launched a massive propaganda campaign with text messages warning people. We've had Revolutionary Guard commanders on TV telling people that their children will be shot if they go out into the street, and I quote, echo the sentiments of the enemy. So the regime is desperately trying to hold itself together. And of course, when it's desperate is when stupid things happen.
Absolutely. Well, David Patrikarakos, thank you so much for joining us this morning on GB News. As David says, as they try and cling on to that power, it does become more and more risky for the Iranian people. I'm not sure if Donald Trump's comments about him not being too worried about whether a democracy is formed in Iran or if there's another religious leader are particularly helpful to those Iranian people. Yeah,
the Americans, when they went in, they said, you know, the help is here. The messaging has certainly shifted a touch since then. Right, still to come here on Saturday Morning Live this morning, the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch. She will accuse Labour of student politics over their response to that war in Iran, saying that today's Labour Party is nothing like the patriotic Labour Party of yesteryear. We'll bring that speech to you live later in the show.
But next, the Queen wants children to spend less time on their phones and read more books. We'll be discussing that and much more in our paper review. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Yeah, that's got a bit of a smell.
A birthday fit for a Queenie.
My name was Queenie Robinson. Everybody wants to know about my name. Is it a real name? Is it a nickname? No, it's not. It's on my birth certificate. My father forgot what I should have been called, and I've never found out since.
But the name didn't stick, and Queenie quickly became known as Robbie after signing up to join the RAF. Robbie served in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force in a bomber command, despite still being 17.
She said, "You are 18, aren't you?" I said, "Oh, yes, I'll be 19 in February." Because lie out. I was only 17. She sort of gave me an old-fashioned look. She didn't believe me, I know.
Her first love, Frank Vincent, also served in the war.
There's Frank, yeah. And that's his aircraft, the Lancaster.
Aged 21, he flew in the Lancaster bomber. But just months before they were due to get married, Frank was killed in action. Robbie has kept Frank's love of aviation alive, flying a Spitfire, aged 101.
I had a male called James as my pilot, and he said, "Do you want to do a victory roll, Robbie?" So I said, "Oh, yes." So we turned turtle sort of thing, and there was me sort of sitting there looking at pink clouds upside down.
In December, Robbie took to the skies once again, this time without an engine, in a glider, aged 102. This week, Robbie is celebrating her 103rd birthday.
My friend suggests that my next ambition is to jump tandem out of a plane.
GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Loyalty points is here. They're our way of saying thank you for spending time with GB News. Through commenting on your say, voting in You Decide polls and shaping the debate, you can earn GB loyalty points. Unlock rewards, reach milestones and climb leaderboards. Don't just watch our programmes, come and be part of them. Get started by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/loyalty points.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live. Let's recap that breaking news this morning, because the Soham killer, Ian Huntley, has died in hospital after he was attacked in the workshop of the maximum security Frankland prison in County Durham by an inmate with a metal bar on February the 26th.
Yes, his life support machine was turned off last night, and of course we will have more on this throughout the show.
Right, we're joined in the studio now by the former Labour Party NEC chair, Baroness Hayter, and the former Conservative advisor, Laura McAvat. Good morning to you both. Morning.
Good morning.
Let's start with this breaking news you've seen, the American bombers landing at RAF Fairford. Britain is now well and truly in this fight, Baroness Sater? What do you make of Sir Keir Starmer changing his position to allow the Americans to use our bases?
Well, hold on. I mean, I think the important thing is that I was brought up in there. I'm a forces brat. I was brought up in RAF stations, and I mean, there's a bit of pride of what our Air Force and indeed our other services are doing. But I think the important thing is looking at where all of this is happening. It's the 80th anniversary this week of a very famous speech by Churchill in Fulton, Missouri, where he talked about the Iron Curtain descending in Europe. And what happened after that? We reacted and all our forces were set up ready for the Cold War. That ended, but we now have a new global challenge, which is about, if you like, the West against both Russia on one point and then places like Iran. And I think the important thing is not to be saying, will we late, will we in a day late over something. It's have we taken the right response now, working with our allies, the Americans, the Europeans, our Gulf friends, to make sure we're doing the right thing now to cool this war, to try and bring an end to it. My judgment is we're playing that about right.
What do you think, Lauren? Because I think it does matter exactly when we act. It now looks as though French and German ships are going to reach bases before our HMS Dragon manages to get there, and that is because Keir Starmer has been dragging his feet. The UK isn't looking like a sort of global leader in this war, and doesn't that matter?
I don't think, actually, it's Keir Starmer who's been dragging his feet. I think Cabinet decided to refuse him permission to go down this road, which is not something that should be allowed to happen. Ed Miliband, it seems, was leading a charge within Cabinet to stop a more fulsome British response.
He's the Prime Minister. The final decision lies with him.
Well, yeah, you would say that, wouldn't you? But, you know, it doesn't appear to ever pan out that way for him. It appears that he only ever consults and acts in, you know, sort of a lawyer concert fashion that doesn't end up resulting in a clear line early enough. And part of the difficulty that we've got coming down the line here is HMS Dragon is being refitted in Portsmouth, where contracts were altered by the government last year to be 9 to 5 only and not 24/7 shift work, and they can't be altered back at this point. And so, yeah, it's going to take longer to try and get HMS Dragon there. But I don't believe that the Labour Party in government is the only entity worth blaming here. The Conservative Party in government for 14 years did not invest in the military, did not invest in our defence forces, and we should be held equally culpable to the Labour Party's decision-making now for our decision-making then about what was invested in. But when it comes to RAF Airford, this is not a new thing. The base has been in continual US use since 1944, and bombers have come in and out of there for almost every operation that the United States has ever participated in east of the Atlantic.
It's a long time since a US bomber returned from a strike on a foreign country and landed at RAF Airford, which we're not involved in. That happened this morning. 3 B-1 bombers landing at that base in a strange position, Baroness Sater, where the UK was not allowing them to use them last week, the Americans that is, but changed its position to say they can be used in defensive operations. Are you confident that the American bombers flying out of British bases will be defensive? What does that actually mean?
Well, I think that remember, we're part of NATO, and NATO is a defence alliance, and that has always been our position, and we should remain there.
This isn't a NATO operation, though.
No, it isn't, but we are part of NATO, and our strongest relationship in NATO is with America. So, you know, it is absolutely grounded in all of our defence, is that we are a defence force. It's interesting, of course, the Americans now call their leader the Secretary of State, I think, for war, rather. Right. Ours remains defence.
They've altered that back in the last 24 hours, so they've started referring to him as the Department for Defence again.
How interesting. But therefore, I think it was absolutely right that we should not be on the front foot. We should not be starting that invasion. But once our troops and our people, whether it was in Cyprus or anywhere else, are at risk, or indeed our shipping, you know, we've got real economic problems when Iran wants to close waterworks as well, then it's absolutely right that we are defending. So I think it was completely accurate to say we are not on the front foot here, we're not part of the invasion, we're not going with Israel and America invading that, but once there's a threat to our people, our security, then, of course, our defence that's when we have to move.
We have to be
but can
really
I just say
careful
one
with the
other
language.
thing?
It's not an invasion. There's no ground troops on the force anywhere. That is what constitutes an invasion. This is an airstrike. It's very different.
I think attacking another country. I mean, that would, you know, I think another country. Attacking another country by air is also a form of invasion. But I just think we also have to pause. There are enormous diplomatic talks going on at the moment with the Gulf states, with the European Union, and actually some armchair generals trying to talk about the size of bombers and when they should go probably isn't going to determine the outcome of this war. It's going to be whether we diplomatically can negotiate a calming down and a saving of life by everybody pulling back.
And it's also going to end up being dictated by whether or not Dubai shuts off financial channels to Iran, which it's refused to do for 40 years. It has operated as Iran's black market translation capital for all that time, for gold, for oil, for everything that's needed to be cleaned. And it has done so by saying that it is a kind of a neutral space, and therefore it's not something that's going to be enforced or not enforced.
Right, well, we'll reach out to the Emiratis for a statement on that accusation. But thank you very much, Baroness Hayter and Lauren McCavitt, for your time this morning. We'll see you both in the next hour.
Well, still to come, a new anti-Muslim hostilities czar and Islamophobia definition are finally set to be unveiled by the government on Monday. But do we need either of those things? We'll be discussing that at length, I suspect, and I'll be really interested to hear what you think on your say. But first, your latest news headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Good morning. The headlines from the GB newsroom. It's reported the SOA murderer Ian Huntley has died in hospital after he was attacked at HMB Frankland in Durham last week. He was serving a life sentence for the murders of 10-year-olds Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman in 2002. President Donald Trump is warning Tehran only its unconditional surrender will end the conflict, as the US military confirmed they've struck over 3,000 targets in Iran. Meanwhile, a second government-chartered flight carrying British citizens from Oman landed in Gatwick this morning, with more flights to be announced over the coming days. Canada's Prime Minister says Andrew Mountbatten Windsor should be removed from the royal line of succession, calling his actions deplorable. 4 people have been killed and more than a dozen injured as tornadoes and strong winds hit southern Michigan. Hundreds of residents are without power. And 23 bereaved parents are urging MPs to support a ban on social media for under 16s, warning mothers and fathers can't regulate billion-dollar technology. You're up to date. I'll have more for you at 11 o'clock.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Thank you, Bethany. Well, coming up after the break, we've got an exclusive report on the National Grooming Gangs inquiry, because GB News can reveal that many survivors are struggling to reach out to the inquiry team as the consultation period for the terms of reference are closing. We also understand that they cannot get in touch with survivors in Wales.
And we'll also be talking about the government's plan to introduce a new anti-Muslim hostility czar. Is that something that the nation needs, or is there a risk that it's going to clamp down on free speech and introduce blasphemy laws by the back door? We'll be discussing that and much more later on.
All that after the break.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It is a chilly start out there today, particularly for Scotland, Northern England, Northern Ireland. Sunny skies, though, where we've got a frosty start. Meanwhile, a lot of cloud remains for many parts of England into Wales, and that cloud continuing to bring some outbreaks of mostly light rain through parts of the Midlands, South Wales and the South West. This rain will be on and off throughout much of the afternoon. It stays sunny for central and eastern Scotland. Cloud thickens in the northwest of Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. Breezy here, lighter winds elsewhere. Still feeling relatively cold compared with recent days, but temperatures close to average 8 to 13 Celsius. And then those temperatures will fall away through the evening across central and eastern Scotland under those clear skies, but it remains cloudier for western Scotland, and into the Outer Hebrides we will see some spots of rain emerging. Northern Ireland, a clearer start to the evening for eastern parts, thicker cloud into the west. West Wales, perhaps some Late clear spells, but for the Midlands into increasingly northern England, we will see some outbreaks of rain as the thicker cloud in the south tends to move further north. Could even be some heavier bursts of rain moving into the south and southwest, as well as Wales overnight. We keep the cloudy skies. The cloud lowers across many central and southern areas, leading to some mist and murk first thing Sunday. The clearest skies remain across central and eastern Scotland. That's where it will be a frosty start, otherwise generally mild to begin things on Sunday. A lot more cloud, I think, across the United Kingdom. Still cloudy for England and Wales, but increasingly cloudy as well for Scotland, especially Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, where we'll see outbreaks of rain move in during the day. Temperatures a little bit higher compared with Saturday. We're talking about mid-teens in the south, low teens further north.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
the Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
Because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with Charlie and Olivia. Let's recap some breaking news from this morning. The Soham killer Ian Huntley has died in hospital after he was attacked in the workshop of the maximum security Franklin prison in County Durham by an inmate with a metal bar on February the 26th.
Yes, his life machine was turned off last night and he died this morning. We'll have more on that story throughout the show. But for now, Britain is to get a new anti-Muslim hostility czar under plans to be outlined by the government on Monday, which will also finally include that new definition of Islamophobia.
Back in December, Sir Keir Starmer assured MPs during PMQs there would be no introduction or reintroduction of a blasphemy law.
Well, joining us now is the founder of Faith Matters and Tell Mama, Fiaz Mughal. Fiaz, thank you very much for joining us on Saturday Morning Live. It's really interesting. The Spectator has seen a copy of the report from the government. Some of it seems to be pretty muscular. It talks about integration being very, very important. It talks about 3/4 of the police's anti-terror work being because of Islamists. But in other places, it looks as though this anti-Muslim hostility czar could mean a crackdown on free speech in the UK. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yes. First of all, let me just tell you the issues around Islamist extremism that are highlighted in this paper did not come about because of an automatic response from Labour. They came from a lot of pressure from individuals, organisations and media sources like you to even discuss the issue of Islamist extremism, which is really troubling for Labour. They are like a bulldog chewing a wasp. They just don't want to talk about it. So this is a major gain by getting that in the report. The second thing, let's look at the history of all of this discussion around the definition. It started off with being pretty much a blasphemy definition. It then included racialization around saying Muslims are a race to bring in additional protections. That has been challenged. It looks like that will be dropped. The working group were hand-picked individuals. There was no open process. So, Labour have been taken kicking and screaming to this point where they have, in effect, changed the definition on numerous occasions because it was de facto a blasphemy law. That does not give us a lot of trust in how this may impact free speech.
Well, Fiaz, when they've been developing this definition and the work around it, we've heard government ministers and plenty of Labour MPs talk about what they're saying is the Islamophobia crisis in Britain. There's been a surge in hate crimes. Do you think there is a space within what they're planning to get something sufficient over the line, or do you just see it all as a major risk to free speech in the country?
Well, first of all, having monitored this for 10 years, issues of anti-Muslim hate, and I use this word, so I'm glad we've changed from the term Islamophobia to anti-Muslim hate. That battle was not easy, but the reality is, yes, there is space to try to make sure it doesn't impact free speech. And yes, there are peaks and troughs, real peaks and troughs, when there are terrorist attacks, when there are international issues. There are impacts on Muslims in the UK. But here's the thing. It has taken us all so much energy and effort to try to amend this process because Labour foolishly just go into this knee-jerk authoritarian reaction. It really is authoritarian in relation to issues on free speech. So we got to keep watching them. We got to keep being aware of what they're doing. And troublingly for me, is who is advising them, because the people who advise them take a knee-jerk reaction to shut down speech. Let's shut that down. Let's shut this down. That is not what we need in our country. People have the right to challenge faith. People don't have the right to attack people. That's the difference.
We should just say that Labour would dispute the allegation that it's being authoritarian here. Can I just ask you about this idea of introducing an anti-Muslim hostility czar? Is that the right approach, or is there a danger that this person, I mean, obviously a lot depends on who this person is, but if they're a sort of activist in this space, they could end up being really amplified by the government and having quite a lot of power. Is this the right approach from the government?
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right. The government have repeatedly done this. They push forward people and build them up. I've seen this many, many years. They push forward people and build them up. And these people are not coming with any sense of free speech. They're not coming with any sense of an open Britain. They're not coming with any sense of anything can be discussed in our country. These people they build up are themselves authoritarian. I'm going to use that word again, towards Muslims like me. Muslims like me who believe in a free country, in a country where you can discuss anything. So first of all, yes, they push the wrong people forward, and they will do it again. And secondly, I've got to say this, you know, the government takes the approach that because the Jewish communities have a representative in Lord Mann, Muslims have to have one. This is also a ruse because both communities historically, in terms of numbers, in terms of data, in terms of the background, are different. They're different. And there is some significant element of relevance at some points. International issues affect Jewish communities, international issues affect Muslim communities. But the knee-jerk assumption that because Jewish communities have it, Muslim communities have to have one, is itself in a false premise and just plays to this kind of, well, if somebody's got it, we've got to give it to somebody else. And then my question could be, what about Sikh communities? They've been attacked. Okay, their numbers may not be high in terms of attacks, but they've been attacked and they will continue to be targeted. What about them? We can go down a slippery slope here.
I see that. Sorry, Fiaz, we've just run out of time. Founder of Faith Matters and Tal Mama, Fiaz Mughal, thank you very much for your time this morning.
It would be very nice if Fiaz became the new anti-Muslim hostility czar. I think he'd be a great man for the job, government, if you're watching.
He wouldn't use the term Islamophobia because, like me, he thinks it's pernicious and dangerous. But there we go. Right, well, a Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government spokesperson said they don't comment on leaks. There you go.
Well, still to come.
Will the Prime Minister please assure us that the final terms of reference will reflect these concerns?
Well, GB News can reveal this morning that some grooming gang victims are struggling to meet with a national inquiry team as they are preparing to finalise their terms of reference. Well, the Shadow Minister, Katie Lamb, raised the issue of those terms of reference in the Commons this week. We'll get all the latest on that.
This is Saturday Morning Live, only on GB News.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Plenty of fine weather across southern Europe at the moment, although still some showers clearing Spain into the Balearics over the next few days. Breezy for the Canaries, nothing unusual, however, and clearing skies for Portugal, at least for Sunday, before some rain arrives on Monday. Here are the showers moving through eastern Spain into the Balearics during the early part of the week. Also, plenty of showers expected through Italy, sunny spells for Greece.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
The late edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, late edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, late edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Brave.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. And some grooming gang victims are struggling to meet with the National Inquiry team as it prepares to finalise its terms of reference, GB News can disclose. A letter sent to Baroness Longfield, signed by many survivors, has asked for a dedicated and accessible website for victims so that they can get in touch and register their interest in engaging with the process.
Well, one of the people who's signed a letter to the inquiry chair, Baroness Longfield, that's the law firm Switolskis, and we're joined by their director, David Greenwood, on the Child Abuse Compensation Claims Unit. David, thank you for being with us this morning. We're also reporting this morning at GB News that some survivors in Wales are struggling to reach out to the inquiry team because the inquiry can't find an organisation in the country to liaise with and support them. What do you make of these developments?
Yes, it's really difficult for some women to even get out into their own towns for fear of bumping into the people that abuse them. I spoke to many over the years who are really scared of going out and about into particular places in their own towns and their regions. So accessibility needs to be given a lot more thought. I know that Baroness Longfield has spoken to women in London, in Manchester and in Leeds, but those are only, centres of big conurbations. We need some more outreach into different areas, and the terms of reference of the inquiry are really important to get right. There are a lot of women who have opinions and want their voices to be heard, why shouldn't they be heard? Yes, and the point that you make about Wales is really important. I've dealt with a number of cases in Wales over the years, people being trafficked in and out of there, so why shouldn't Wales be as important as anywhere else? This is something that's been, to my knowledge, happening in many, many towns and cities across the country, and the inquiry really needs to make an effort to reach out to them.
And what would improved accessibility look like? As you say, some of these women are scared to go into their own towns. Should it be sort of digitalised? Would a website encouraging people to register their interest be enough? How else could accessibility be improved?
Well, of course, there's been a consultation that's been running since, I think it was January, until the 5th of March. It just finished this last week on the draft terms of reference. There have been many submissions made about those draft terms of reference, and we hope that they will be improved. But when I was speaking to women about the terms of reference and the consultation, and indeed the existence of the inquiry itself, I found that many women didn't even know that it was happening. A lot of people, the response to all this and the inquiry is not top of their agenda. They're just trying to get on with their lives and look after their children, etc., and survive the whole thing. Then there's obviously a difficulty with getting the knowledge of this out to women who are affected by it. So it definitely needs some thought as to how accessible it can be. Yes, it needs to be digital. Yes, there needs to be a website as well. But there needs to be some kind of public information campaign to get out there to the many thousands of women who have been affected by this. And overall, it needs to be, any digital website needs to be really, really simple to use, really simple to find, and it needs to allow women to have their voices in the inquiry.
David, I understand that Baroness Longfield will be meeting with more survivors later this month. They've got to finalise that terms of reference by the end of the month. Do you think that consultation period should be extended? I've had the exact same experience as you, speaking to many victims and survivors who've supported our reporting at GB News over the last several years, saying that they did not know that their perspective was being sought by the inquiry on these terms of references. And separately as well, should the inquiry be looking at the link between offending and ethnicity, culture and religion? Definitely, the outreach to these women who just some of them don't know about it. I'll repeating myself, but there really needs to be more outreach. And on this separate question of the link between ethnicity, culture, religion, and this type of offending, well, it isn't in the terms of reference at the moment. The terms of reference at the moment only address culture, religion, and ethnicity in terms of the responses of statutory agencies. And this is a conundrum that we've all grappled with since Rotherham broke in 2012. To what extent has religious teaching, culture and ethnicity influenced how these grooming gangs behave and how they feel it's okay to rape girls on our streets? David, sorry, we've got to wrap it up there. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Very glad to have you on to refer into that. We've got a statement from a spokesperson for the statutory inquiry saying that it's been engaging with organisations and individuals across England and Wales throughout the consultation period. They will continue to engage with survivors before the terms of reference are liaised, and they can get in touch with them online.
It's a prize package worth over £92,000. There's a totally tax-free £25,000 in cash that you'll be able to spend on anything you like this year. Plus, you'll also get to drive away in a brand new Benevan 122 camper van. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, this latest 2026 model comes fully loaded with everything you'd expect. For another chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. It's GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 11 a.m. on Saturday, the 6th of March. Live across the United Kingdom, this is Saturday Morning Live.
And breaking news this morning, Soham murderer Ian Huntley has died in hospital. It's understood he was taken to hospital after being attacked at HMP Frankland in Durham.
Yeah, the 52-year-old was attacked by a fellow inmate with a 3-foot metal bar some 15 times 11 days ago, and today has died from his injuries.
Well, 1 week on from the start of the war in Iran, and American bombers have started to land at British bases. 3 B-1 bombers have landed this morning.
And with protests expected outside RAF Fairford later today and a Stop the War march in London this afternoon, we're asking, why was the UK so slow to react? And when did the military offer plans to bolster our presence in the region?
Well, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage met with members of the Trump administration in Mar-a-Lago in Florida overnight, and he gave a scathing review of the state of the special relationship.
I see very little prospect of the relationship between Starmer and Trump improving.
Elsewhere, this morning, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch will accuse Labour of student politics over their response to the war in Iran. We'll bring you that speech live later in the show.
Elsewhere, a new anti-Muslim hostility SAR and Islamophobia definition are set to be revealed by the government on Monday. But do we need either of those things?
The biggest stories, boldest opinions and liveliest debates over the next hour. I'm Olivia Utley.
And I'm Charlie Peters. And your weekend starts here.
So we're expecting the leader of the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch, to speak in the next 15 minutes or so. She's going to be pretty brutal about Labour, calling it an unpatriotic party and making a lot of accusations about the lack of money that Labour is spending on defence. She's on pretty shaky ground, though, isn't she, Charlie, given what the Conservatives did to defence?
Shaky, I think it's an earthquake. Yes, the former Defence Minister, Ben Wallace, he admitted, even while the Conservatives were in government, that defence had been hollowed out in recent years, including by the Conservative government, of course. I also think Kemi Badenoch made a major misstep yesterday, saying that our fighter jets had been hanging around in Cyprus. Of course, they'd been shooting down Iranian drones flying over Jordan. They've been involved in intercepting drones that could have been heading straight to our people. That sort of language, very difficult to use if you're accusing the government of being unpatriotic.
Well, absolutely. Kemi Badenoch used to be famed for her gaffes, but in recent months, most people say she's got rather better. This was, as you say, a slip of the tongue, I think, and I think one that she will be regretting. Send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/yoursay. But before we do anything else, Bethany Elsey has all your news headlines.
Olivia, Charlie, thank you. Good morning. Your top stories from the GB newsroom at 11:03. It's reported the Sower murderer Ian Huntley has died in hospital after being attacked in a maximum security prison. The 52-year-old suffered brain trauma when an inmate repeatedly hit him over the head with a metal bar at HMP Frankland in Durham last week. Sources say his life support machine was switched off last night. Huntley was serving a life sentence for the murders of 10-year-olds Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman in 2002. War in the Middle East has entered its second week, with President Donald Trump warning only Tehran's unconditional surrender will end the conflict. The White House has downplayed reports that Russia is sharing intelligence with Iran about US targets, saying it's not making any difference as its military have struck over 3,000 targets. There's heavy smoke and fire at Iran's Mehrabad airport as Israel, Iran and Lebanon continue to exchange fire. And an American bomber has landed at RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire after Sir Keir Starmer granted permission for defensive US action from UK bases. Meanwhile, a second government-chartered flight carrying British citizens from Oman landed at Gatwick this morning, with more flights to be announced over the coming days. The Chief of Defence Staff, Sir Richard Knighton, says as the war escalates, all options are under review.
There's been a close relationship between Russia and Iran over many years. We've seen that Russia has been using Iranian technology in drones, for example, against Ukraine. And I have no doubt that what Russia has been learning is being passed back to Iran. This is an axis of evil and we need to call it out. These campaigns and conflicts evolve over time and we will keep all options under review. But right now my focus is on protecting our interests and our people right across the region.
Canada's Prime Minister says Andrew Mountbatten Windsor should be removed from the royal line of succession. Speaking to reporters in Tokyo, Mark Carney says the former prince's actions are deplorable and it's necessary he be removed as eighth in line to the throne. The British government is considering the move after he was arrested last month on suspicion of misconduct in a public office. Andrew has denied any wrongdoing over his links to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, but has not directly responded to these latest allegations. 4 people have been killed and more than a dozen injured as tornadoes and strong winds hit southern Michigan. The storms have destroyed multiple homes and left hundreds of residents without power. The governor has activated a state of emergency to monitor what she's described as a devastating situation. And 23 bereaved parents are urging MPs to support a ban on social media for under-16s, warning mothers and fathers can't regulate billion-dollar technology. MPs are set to debate the blanket ban, which is supported by the House of Lords, on Monday. But the government is proposing to replace that with a more flexible power that would allow ministers to prevent or restrict children's access to specific platforms. But in a letter to MPs, the group of parents say every delay leaves children exposed to harmful products. You're up to date. I'll have more for you in half an hour.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Thank
Thank you, Bethany, and welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with Charlie Peters and me, Olivia Utley.
Now, the Soho murderer Ian Huntley has died. Sources say that his life support machine was switched off after brain tests showed he was in a vegetative state. He was taken to hospital after being attacked at HMP Frankland in Durham.
Huntley was serving a life sentence with a minimum term of 40 years for the murders of 10-year-olds Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman in 2002. Our GB News national reporter Will Godley joins us now. Will, what's the update?
Well, according to the Sun newspaper, they understand that doctors recorded his death at around 8:45 this morning. That's after sources saying that his life support machine was switched off at lunchtime yesterday after when he arrived at Newcastle Royal Infirmary on the 26th of February, he was given just a 5% chance of survival after being attacked by a fellow inmate at HMP Frankland. Of course, a prison which houses some of the most despicable criminals in the country. It's nicknamed Monster Mansion because of the kinds of people who are in there. And this attack in HMP Frankland happened in the recycling area of the prison when a fellow inmate attacked Huntley with a 3-foot spiked metal pole and hit him up to 15 times. And when paramedics found him, he was reportedly found barely breathing and covered in blood. And the Sun's reporting this morning that Ian Huntley's mum visited him in hospital and reportedly she told her friends that he was unrecognisable when she saw him at Newcastle Royal Infirmary, reportedly telling friends, "Part of me hopes he passes away this time." She made her 175-mile car journey from her home to her son's bedside with a friend, and apparently she told friends she just wants to be free of it, and she knows now that flags will fly high after he has died from his injuries. Of course, someone who was serving a 40-year life sentence for the murders of two 10-year-old girls in Soham in 2002 when he lured them to his home and killed them. And there was a 2-week-long search for these girls who had disappeared when they left a family barbecue. They were on their way to buy sweets when he murdered them, and then they were found 2 weeks later in a ditch, and Huntley was then arrested and sentenced for his crimes.
Well, thank you very much, Will, for that update. And of course, here at GB News, our thoughts are with the families of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, for whom this must be a horrific day, having to hear all the details of those awful crimes again.
Right, let's now speak to the policing and crime commentator, Danny Shaw, who joins us now. Danny, good morning to you. I suppose, first and foremost, this killing, his death, Ian Huntley's death, is a reminder of the dangers faced within prisons towards sex offenders and that the state cannot guarantee their safety.
Well, first of all, I think no one is going to mourn the loss of Ian Huntley, an evil man who committed the most barbaric crimes against two 10-year-old girls, crimes that completely shocked the country when they occurred in 2002. The horror of what had happened, the way that he had manipulated or tried to manipulate journalists who were covering the case, tried to sort of insert himself in the story, and then lied about what had happened, pleaded not guilty, so there was a full trial, and then was convicted with a 40-year minimum term. No one is going to mourn his loss at all. However, we ought to be concerned when violent incidents take place in prison because it feeds into the lack of safety for staff and prisoners. It creates a dangerous environment, and clearly that is not conducive to security in prisons and to rehabilitation of prisoners who are going to be let out at some point. Huntley was never going to be let out. He was given a 40-year minimum term. I think there was no chance of him ever being freed. But there are other prisoners in jail who are going to be let out, and we want them to come out and lead law-abiding lives. And when you have violence in prisons, that doesn't help.
How was the prisoner who attacked him able to get hold of a spiked pole? And it sounds as though this attack, 15 stabs, it sounds as though it was pretty prolonged. Why did no one step in? Perhaps I'm being naive.
Well, I mean, first of all, this will be subject to a criminal investigation by the police. We understand that Durham police are investigating the incident. The suspect, Anthony Russell, is a man who himself is serving a whole life tariff, which means he will never be freed. And what does that mean? That means, firstly, he's an extremely dangerous individual himself, and he's got nothing to lose. And I think that is one of the sort of the side issues of creating a prison regime in which you have more and more prisoners who are serving very, very long sentences, some with no prospect of release. But you asked the question how he got hold of a metal pole with a spiked end to it. It is possible for some prisoners to sort of manage to fashion weapons out of implements, out of tools that are being used in workshops and so on. But how he managed to do that, what kind of supervision he was under, that really is a question for the investigation. I mean, all I would say is prisoners have got so much time on their hands. They spend hours and hours thinking of ways in which they can either get drugs into prison, in which they can attack other people, in which they can plot an escape. And some of them come up with ingenious ways of doing that. It is not beyond the realms of possibility. We've seen it before, for prisoners to manage to get weapons in or to fashion weapons out of everyday items that happen to be in prison. But that will be the subject of an investigation, I'm sure, because this is not the first time that it has happened at Franklin prison, and that I think will be a huge concern, this high security jail. What sort of steps are being put in place to stop these kinds of events happening?
Yeah, especially because that's a prison where terrorism offenders are kept, including members of ISIS, etc. But policing and crime commentator Danny Shaw, thank you very much for your time this morning. We should just quickly say, of course, this is a live police investigation. You heard Danny mention a name there. There is an investigation ongoing.
Thank you very much. Moving on, US President Donald Trump has announced that American defence contractors have agreed to quadruple the supply of military weapons being used in Iran, adding that he'll accept nothing but unconditional surrender.
But what about the British military response? Well, you're seeing the Prime Minister on your screens right now. He has agreed to send 4 additional Typhoon jets to Qatar, plus 2 helicopters and a destroyer will be sent to Cyprus. But that destroyer, HMS Dragon, remains docked in Portsmouth.
So we're asking this morning, why was the UK so slow to react, and when did the military offer plans to bolster our presence in the region? The Chief of the Defence Staff, Sir Richard Knighton, defended the UK response this morning.
For several weeks now, we've been bolstering our presence and the forces in the Middle East, particularly at Cyprus, and doing that in consultation with our regional partners. We've added additional Typhoons, F-35, over 400 people to help protect and defend the airspace around Cyprus. And even as late as Wednesday, Thursday, before the war started, Donald Trump was talking about a peaceful resolution. When the war started on Saturday, it became clear over the next 48 hours that Iran's response was going to be very much broader, wild and indiscriminate.
Well, amid the conflict, there's going to be big questions about how it's going to affect energy providers, of course, the Strait of Hormuz and oil supplies. So let's speak to the shipping expert and former British Army Colonel Ben Farrell, who joins us now. Good morning to you, Ben. Thanks for your time this morning. First and foremost, what is the impact going to be on British consumers? Because the Strait of Hormuz, no activity at the moment.
Yeah, morning. Let me just lay out the situation at the end of the sort of first week. As we move into a second week of war in the region, it's probably worth starting. I've looked at the maritime picture this morning, and there's simply no movement of tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. So the implications of that. So the world's biggest oil refinery at Ras Tanura has effectively is not open, as is the world's biggest gas terminal further south there, north of the Strait of Hormuz at Al Rafana, and that has had a knock-on effect. You can see the price of crude oil is up about 15% this week, and importantly, the price of gas in the United Kingdom is up 70%. Actually, at one stage this week, it was up 100%. The difference in the price escalation relates to the ability to store oil and the reserves of oil versus gas, which obviously is more difficult to store. There's lots of detail in this I could go into, but there are a couple of other things just to highlight and then go on to answer your question. Let's just take helium. Apart from being important for party balloons, 1/3 of the world's supply comes from Qatar, and that has stopped. And actually, what it's critically vital for are things, for example, cooling of MRI systems in our hospitals. So the picture is of vital supplies that the UK needs have been disrupted, and the prices are escalating. Even you can see that in airline fuel as well. Actually, it's gone up 50% this week. So the question remains that's going to have an economic and also a practical impact in terms of resilience, national resilience. So it does open a question about how resilient we are to shocks like this around the world.
Can I just ask about Donald Trump's comments this morning? He has said that if oil prices go up, they go up. It's quite a glib response. How's that going to go down with American voters who are presumably quite worried about their energy bills going up?
I think everybody globally will be worried about that. I think it's a. Do you know what? That's a consistently inconsistent position from his statement yesterday that they were going to do something to manage the global oil prices. So it might be at the heart of all this is a view of what is actually the plan, what is the strategy, what is the approach to what's going on in the region at the moment. It seems to me unclear how this campaign is being designed and what the outcomes are. And that's just another example of that, I think. I mean, I wanted to just add that you may remember in 2007, the IRGC, the Iranian military took 15 British sailors in the Northern Arabian Gulf. And I was involved in our response, a national response on Cobra at the time. And after consultation with lots of different experts, the conclusion was that we should wait for 48 hours because typically in Iran, even during peacetime, the relationship between the military and the Ayatollahs was so distant that there was no real command and control in the way we would typically see it in our society. So I'm looking at this, and what's happening today is you can see, on the one hand, Iran apologizing to the Gulf states for attacking them. On the other hand, the attacks continuing. So it's so disjointed over there at the moment. My view is we ought to just wait and see, and I would encourage the US to sort of pause and actually consider what's going on. There is an opportunity to bring some sort of order to what's going on in Iran, but that's going to take some time.
Well, as you urge the US to consider a pause, we've seen footage this morning, broken first on GBNews, that we've got 3 more B-1 bombers arriving at RAF Fairford this morning, Ben. What do you make of British bases now being used for those direct strikes on Iran? We're now well and truly in this fight, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, I suppose it has been inconsistent. Another piece of sort of not particularly well thought through, policy, and we're now in it. I have to say, I mean, I live in Oxfordshire, and we have US bases near us, and it seems that to some extent it's a moot point whether they use them or not. There's always a US presence here. So personally, against the backdrop of a conversation that was going on about us saying, you're talking about Greenland a few months ago, we've had a long-term relationship with the United States. Personally, I think we should have acquiesced in the sense of supported the US from the beginning. Not to say we needed to be involved, but we should have allowed them to use our bases.
Well, British Army Colonel Ben Farrell, thank you so much for joining us on Saturday Morning Live this morning.
Right, some breaking news for you here. 21 minutes past 11. US President Donald Trump has just posted on Truth Social. Iran just stated that they are going to hit very hard today, harder than they have ever hit before. They better not do that, however, because if they do, we will hit them with a force that has never been seen before. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That statement just coming into us from President Donald Trump. He's also said Iran, which is being beat to hell, has apologised and surrendered to its Middle East neighbours and promised that it will not shoot at them anymore.
Yes, this promise was only made because of the relentless US and Israeli attacks. He goes on, they were looking to take over and rule the Middle East. It is the first time that Iran has ever lost in thousands of years to surrounding Middle Eastern countries. They have said, thank you, President Trump. I have said, you're welcome. Iran is no longer the bully of the Middle East. They are instead the loser of the Middle East.
Well, President Trump's made that statement, but just in the last few moments, a drone has successfully hit the airport in Dubai. I think we can very quickly bring you that footage now. Here it is. So Iran says they're not going to strike the UAE anymore. Trump says they've apologised, but there we have it. Breaking news, there's been a successful drone strike on that airport in Dubai.
Well, let's go live to Harrogate now, where Kemi Badenoch is speaking at her party's spring conference.
Are working to promote their interests over ours. It's not just the regime in Tehran, it's Putin, a man prepared to send more than 1 million Russian soldiers to their death as he tries to march his army across Europe. It's China, leading an axis of authoritarian states. Just this week, the husband of a Labour MP was arrested on suspicion of spying for China. As instability spreads, these states are pushing further and further to see what they can get away with. At a time when Britain needs strong and decisive leadership, we have a Prime Minister who is too afraid of making the wrong decision, too afraid to make any decision at all. Last week's by-election has spooked the Labour Party. They watched the Greens campaigning on sectarian voting lines, a tactic that Labour used for many years is now being turned against them. And now, Keir Starmer is too scared to make foreign interventions for fear of upsetting a tiny section of that electorate. Everyone remembers the mistakes of the Iraq War. Nobody sensible is suggesting that we should drop bombs without a second thought. But Keir Starmer spent days consulting lawyers, plucking up the courage to say whose side he was on. Canada and Australia had the moral clarity to do so immediately and unequivocally. And even now, our Prime Minister is sitting on the fence. We are in this war, whether Keir Starmer likes it or not. For too long, Britain has been governed as if it's still the 1990s. Back then, people thought the era of permanent peace, cheap energy, and expanding global trade would go on forever. From 1989 to 2022, defence spending reduced under successive UK governments of all colours. But it's now clear that this era of peace is coming to an end. Labour have no answers to Britain's problems because they think the world is how it used to be, not how it actually is. And where has that money we stopped spending on defence gone? Before the Second World War, 1 in every £7 the government spent went on health and welfare. By last year, it had soared to 1 in every £3. The peace dividend we inherited has been spent, yet Labour are still determined to spend more. What they don't understand is that a welfare state and an NHS are not facts of life. They are products of a strong economy and a strong country. That is the Conservative mantra today. Public services need growth and economic security. We cannot have economic security without national security. If people in Britain cannot go to bed knowing that the country is being defended, Donald Trump has made it very clear that America is not going to continue to fund NATO's defence of Europe. The world has changed and it is not going back. Britain must start spending 3% of GDP on defence. Every serious person in our military says this. Every serious country in the world is moving that way. But instead of prioritising defence spending, Labour have chosen to spend yet more money this country does not have on lifting the two-child benefit cap. We introduced that cap because we believe that people claiming benefits should face the same choices when it comes to having children as everyone else. That is just basic fairness. Labour say it's going to lift children out of poverty. Do you know what lifts children out of poverty? Their parents being in work in a growing economy. Right now, those parents are living in a country where unemployment is surging, where the cost of living is increasing because of soaring energy prices. You bring these people out of poverty by fixing these things, not by giving them handouts. Last June, we offered Keir Starmer our support in the national interest to pass welfare cuts so that he could spend more on defence. But he declined. He spends all his time strutting the world stage at summits and international conferences. But the fact is, he's not even strong enough to win a war with his own backbenchers. He is a political hostage, held at the behest of a load of half-rate left-wing MPs, none of whom grasp the seriousness of the world that Britain is now in. While the rest of the world rearms, they are playing student politics. Today's Labour Party is nothing like the patriotic Labour Party of yesteryear. In the 1950s, Nye Bevan warned about Britain not having a nuclear deterrent. He described it as the UK being sent naked into the conference chamber. Well, today it's happening again. We are not deterring missile strikes against our bases. The man who wrote Labour's defence review, Sir Richard Barrons, has said the UK is trapped in a conspiracy of stupidity because politicians aren't willing to make the case for cutting public spending to fund defence. Well, we are willing to make that case. It is Labour that is trapped in a conspiracy of stupidity. That's why yesterday I announced that the next Conservative government would reinstate the two-child benefit cap and spend that money on defence. That money will pay for the largest net increase in British troops under any Prime Minister since the Second World War. I have chosen my priority, and that is to keep British families safe. These reinforcements will join thousands of brave servicemen and women, and I want to pay tribute to them for everything they do for our country, day in, day out. This is another down payment on our way to 3%, along with our Sovereign Defence Fund, which says no to Ed Miliband's vanity net zero projects and reallocates £17 billion into defence instead. As Rachel Reeves stood up to speak at the Spring Statement this week, oil and gas prices around the world were spiking. Price rises that have already made it more expensive to fill up your car and will very soon hit your energy bills too. The UK only has enough gas storage to last for 2 weeks. Mark my words, a price shock is coming. And when it does, it won't just hit our pockets, it will have a huge impact on Britain's borrowing costs too. Mortgage rates are already going up, and it will make everything government does more expensive. Yet in that statement, Rachel Reeves had nothing to say about the financial risk we now face. Do you know what her excuse was? The OBR documents had already gone to the printers. Does she really think investors are going to say, OK, fair enough? Rachel Reeves is astonishingly naive. While she claims to be providing stability, Britain is paying more to borrow than Greece, more than Morocco. Investors have no faith in her to balance the books. They can see that she is not willing and not able to cut Britain's debt. Ladies and gentlemen, there are a frightening number of people in our politics, on the Labour benches, in the Greens and the Lib Dems, who genuinely think that His Majesty's government doesn't need to pay its debts. These silly people are either too young to remember the 1970s or too foolish to have learnt the lessons. Well, let me tell them, if we do not cut borrowing, Britain will go bankrupt. There is only one party interested in preventing that, and that's the Conservatives. Last year, I introduced our golden economic rule. For every pound we save, 47 billion and counting, we will put at least half to paying down the deficit, cutting the civil service, slashing the welfare bill, reducing overseas aid. The rest of the money we save, we will spend on making this country stronger. These are difficult choices for difficult times, but we must make them, because every moment we continue to spend our children's inheritance is a moment of failure. No one else in British politics is going to take these hard choices. Nigel Farage has said Vladimir Putin is the world leader he most admires. He blames NATO for the invasion of Ukraine. Reform's last leader in Wales is in prison for taking bribes from Russia. These people are not going to keep Britain safe.
You've been listening to Kemi Badenoch there at the Conservative Spring Conference in Harrogate. And joining us to react is the former chair of the Labour Party, Baroness Hayter, and former Conservative advisor, Lauren McEvock. Baroness Hayter, I'm going to start with you. What did you make of that speech?
I have to say I'm deeply shocked by two things. One is Kemi Badenoch used the words, "We are in this war," and yet there she is, attacking our Prime Minister for what she said was strutting the world stage. Well, actually, the way we stop wars is by diplomacy, by talking to our allies, by negotiating. And I find it extraordinary. She said she paid tribute to our forces. If they are at war, you do not, as the leader of the opposition, then start attacking the leadership of those forces, i.e. the Prime Minister. That is not patriotic. The second thing that shocked me, I mean, really shocked me, she wants, quite rightly, for us to spend more on defence. I absolutely accept that. I think she's right. But she's going to do it by taking money from children. Her way of doing it is to take money from people with more than 2 children in the family. Incidentally, most people who get that, of course, are in work. But she's going to do that to pay for our defence. Why should our children be paying for defence? So I find that really quite shocking. The lack of patriotism, the lack of responsibility from someone who might be Prime Minister, that they cannot support our own Prime Minister in public at a time where, in her words, we are at war.
Baroness Hayter, you say we need to stop wars through diplomacy. It's all very good speaking strongly, but you've got to carry that big stick. You need to be diplomatic through strength. And currently, we're not very strong at all. No proper assets in the region. And you've heard Baroness Hayter there talking about how Kemi Badenoch talking about taking this money from cutting parts of the welfare bill. Frankly, we have chosen welfare, not war, which is why we've got 0 destroyers at sea, but a welfare bill that goes into the hundreds of billions.
Absolutely, and I think that, it's
although she's still talking, and we can't listen in quite the level anymore, I haven't heard her with any kind of mea culpa for the 14 years where we did not put enough into defence. Iran has been an irrational actor for decades, and we needed to be much better prepared for diplomacy to break down with Iran. Iran has bombed Oman in the last week. Oman was leading the diplomatic talks. And so the idea that we can have a diplomatic relationship and conversation with a country that has become a full-blown irrational actor, I think is not something that is reasonable. There does come a point where that conversation breaks down. But what I think is very interesting, what Baroness Aita said, is this idea that it's unpatriotic to provide criticism politically during a time of war, as if the Prime Minister is somehow head of the armed forces, which he is not. The structure of the armed forces means that the political direction is set by the government, but the head of the armed forces remains the king, and the idea that it's unpatriotic to provide political criticism to political decisions that impact the armed forces is some really dangerous territory for us to work down, because the opposition has to be able to legitimately oppose political and financial decision-making that the government enters into. I mean, surely, yes, that is the job of the opposition, to be criticising, to be holding the government's feet to the fire on this. Can you really say that what Kemi Badenoch doing today is unpatriotic? Isn't she doing her job as leader of the opposition?
Well, there's two things to say. One is this is an election speech. It's in the run-up to elections. It's at the Tory party conference. It is an absolute political speech to try and win votes. That is not what you should be doing at a time of war. You should be, you know, she is a...
So you think we're at war?
Well, I'm using her words. She says we are in this war.
Do you agree with her?
I don't actually. I think
so
we're. But I'm absolutely, you know, using the words that she's just used in Harrogate. But she is a Privy Councillor. She has access to the Prime Minister. She has absolute right, and I know is in there because she acknowledges that in there, and she has the ability at that point to make her points to it. But actually, at a critical time like this is the time where we should be saying, we, as we did with Ukraine, we absolutely backed. It was first Boris Johnson at the time of Ukraine. We absolutely went there. We had some differences, but we did that in private, because when you're taking on, I think you used the word rogue. I think Lauren said a rogue government. She's absolutely
irrational
right.
actor.
Irrational actor. Thank you. When you're doing that, then showing that our country is together in how we're doing that seems to me really important.
Yes, but there's already been a National Security Leak that says that the Cabinet isn't together on that. This Ed Miliband led a revolt in Cabinet that prevented the Prime Minister from doing anything. And that, of course, should be open to scrutiny. The last time there was a National Security Leak from the Council, someone got fired from the Cabinet. It is completely unacceptable that the Cabinet cannot reach a decision in private and then report to Privy Council in a manner that is acceptable to anybody, but they can't, because they have absolutely no agreement at Cabinet level and they're making bad decisions as a result.
Well, we don't know about that. That's been reported. But Cabinet, of course, must have different views. They have to have those in private. And, of course, they don't all go in 100% one way at the beginning of the Cabinet. What happens is what comes out. You have a collective view.
But what's happening here is that Keir Starmer is essentially being pulled in two directions. He wants to keep Donald Trump on side. In a way, he probably wants to be backing the war like most of his allies in NATO. But on the other side, you must admit there are some Labour backbenchers, some of whom are worried about the onset of the Greens, some of whom are quite sympathetic with the Stop the War coalition, who really don't want Britain to get involved in this at all. Keir Starmer is being pulled in two directions here. And is there a risk that he ends up sort of having the worst of both worlds?
No, it's a democracy. Of course, in a party we have different views. It would be extraordinary if we woke up this morning or a week ago when this happened and the whole the Labour Party all thought the same way. Of course not.
Right, but they're not allowed to articulate it in a time of war.
Of course it's right we have those discussions. No, you've said this before. He didn't change his mind because it changed up here. He changed it because we moved from a position where somebody else was, I use the word invading. Lauren says we were only, the Americans were only bombing a country, to a very different position when we moved to having to defend our troops. That wasn't a change of mind. That was a change of circumstances. And when circumstances change, you change your reaction.
It was so obvious this was going to happen. You don't have to be a military genius to realise that Iran was going to start striking American allies in the region, which included us. And I just want.
And we therefore prepared for that.
No, we didn't.
But we didn't. That's why the French are sending a boat down and we're not.
Baroness, I could not disagree with you more.
You don't know what was going on.
I could not disagree with you more. The idea
we
that
know.
I'll make this point. The idea that it's unpatriotic to criticise political decisions around responding to a war is for the birds. Political decisions have left us in this trouble. We have been reporting here all week that the Royal Navy and military planners presented options to the Prime Minister to redeploy assets, including a naval destroyer, and that decision was not taken. So Keir Starmer's leadership has to come under question here.
No, what has to come into question?
No? What do you mean?
Well, what has to come into question is how we, as a country, respond to this global insecurity.
Badly, it would turn out.
Look, you know, you're a Conservative, I'm not. You have a view, but actually, at the moment, it is this country whose armed forces are having to respond. It is this country that is going to have to fund an increase, which we both agree on defence spending.
How would you fund that increase, out of interest?
I personally, and I'm not speaking for the Labour Party, I do think we should have a tax which is a defence tax. That may be an extra borrowing bit, or whether it's through, you know, a loan or whatever. We have to do it, and we have to respond
over the
quickly.
course of the next 18 months. The line of what we're paying in welfare is going to cross over what we're taking in an income tax. We can no longer afford to tax people who are working in this country anymore because it is completely unaffordable. And we don't hypothecate taxes in this country. We don't even hypothecate the national insurance to pay for pensions. We don't hypothecate tax in this country. We can't start now for defence.
We have an urgent position now for defence. The world has changed. We face the most serious...
Absolutely. So not cutting welfare at all.
This has to happen fast. It has to get real. You can't
cut welfare, NHS spending hundreds of billions
Even if
of pounds.
that's right, even if you're 100% right by that, that won't happen fast enough to be able to do what we need on defence.
There's a way in a world of crisis.
We've got the Strategic Defence Review that Fiona Hill, Richard Barrons and Lord Robertson worked on. We've got the plans there. We need to start putting the money in now.
And yet there was reported earlier this year that Keir Starmer indicated that he had no idea how much it was going to cost to deliver the Strategic Defence Review and that there wasn't any money for it.
There is money for it, and it will be there.
Well, can I hear one more comment from you on what we heard from Kemi Badenoch? You think that she's being unpatriotic. Is there anything in what she's saying that you think is useful advice, perhaps, for the Prime Minister?
I think what is useful is that she is absolutely making clear that she will support increased expenditure on defence. I think that's absolutely the right approach to take. And she has paid tribute to our forces.
And she has subsequently, by the way, blamed all governments of all colours over the last 30 years for not spending enough on defence.
Let's get some closing thoughts from you as well, Lauren, on that speech.
I think it is incredibly dangerous to say that the opposition can't politically criticise decision-making because of a time of war or some patriotic nonsense. I think that's absolutely... You're right, that's for the birds. You absolutely have to be allowed, as the opposition, to politically criticise decision-making, particularly when there's been a leak from the National Security Council. But I also think that we have to be considering cutting something from the budget because we don't have the money to do it.
And then, just yes or no, would you support British teams striking Iranian targets?
Yes. No.
There we have it. All right, Baroness Hayter, Warren McKevitt, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Well, lots more to come on the show today. Stay tuned. But first, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Cyprus.
To be forced to put right what they've done wrong.
Plenty of fine weather across southern Europe at the moment, although still some showers clearing Spain into the Balearics over the next few days. Breezy for the Canaries, nothing unusual, however, and clearing skies for Portugal, at least for Sunday, before some rain arrives on Monday. Here are the showers moving through eastern Spain into the Balearics during the early part of the week. Also, plenty of showers expected through Italy, sunny spells for Greece.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
the Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
Because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We have a couple of days of training before the opening ceremony starts, and then as soon as that finished, we packed up all our bags and we left for Germany. So we went out of the village for like 4 or 5 days.
Oh, did you? Right.
Yeah. So we have a bit of a training camp away from that, so we can get some better food and a bit of a better routine instead of having all the distractions around the Olympics. And then we came back in ready for our official training.
So the food wasn't so great in the Olympic Village? Is this what we're getting from this?
It wasn't for me, no.
Okay.
It was okay. I lost a decent amount of weight during the time there, but some people enjoyed it, other people struggled. But yeah, it's just the same thing every day for a 3-week period. It gets a bit monotonous.
Now, let's see, 2-man bob and 4-man bob. It was 7th in the end for you, and you did us proud, and we always love to see you and see you representing your country, and you do a great job. But the Germans, I mean, we were talking about this Monday or Tuesday, and Ellie was saying to me, why is it? So how is it that the Germans are so good at bobsleigh? I know you've had wins against them, but it's just this domination. Why is it? I'm saying it's the Vorsprung Dirk Technik maybe of the bob, or is it the athletes? What is it about the Germans?
There's a combination of everything. So they run their program very, very well. So they have a lot of funding that comes in, and they have 4 of their own tracks. They have the push tracks where you practice physically and push in the summer. They have probably 15 or 20 of those dotted around the country when we only have 1. So they do everything to the best of their ability. So they maximise absolutely everything. So that's why they're so good. So we do pretty well considering what we have available to us. But yeah, it's still we're up against it when we go against the Germans. But yeah, they do everything phenomenally well.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News, and just a reminder of that breaking news this morning. SOA murderer Ian Huntley has died in hospital.
Now, sources say that his life support machine was switched off after brain tests showed that he was in a vegetative state. He was taken to hospital after being attacked at HMP Frankland in Durham. Now, Ian Huntley was serving a life sentence with a minimum term of 40 years for the murders of 10-year-olds Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman in 2002.
And we'll have more on that breaking news throughout the day here on GB News. But for now, hundreds of supporters of the Iranian regime are descending on the capital, demanding an end to the war in Iran and commemorating the death of the Ayatollah.
Well, let's go live now to central London, where our colleague and GB News presenter Alex Armstrong is at a Stop the War rally. Good morning, Alex. What can we expect to see this afternoon?
Well, good morning, Olivia. Good morning, Charlie. Yes, of course. We're expecting hundreds, maybe thousands of Stop the War coalition groups to be gathering here today in central London, just steps, actually, from Parliament here in Victoria Gardens. It's quite an interesting coalition of people. We've got groups from the Communist Party, the Socialist Party, Stop the War coalition. We've got pretty much everybody here today from the left, it seems. Many of them are carrying banners, no war on Iran, hands off Iran. There's similar sort of messaging you've seen from these groups in the past. Now, we've already just been into the gardens. There's quite a lot of pro-Islamic regime flags around here. There's one man carrying a portrait of the past Ayatollah Khamenei, of course, which many people across the country have found distasteful, seeing as, of course, Britain is effectively at war with this man. But there's also another group of people here today, the group of anti-Islamist regime Iranian protesters who are going to be gathering in Trafalgar Square. There's a few breakaway groups, so I think the police are going to be quite busy, Charlie and Olivia. Some Iranian groups are going to be getting on a ferry so they can pretty much mirror the march of these anti-war coalition groups here, who are going to be making their way here from Victoria Gardens all the way down to the United States Embassy, where they will end their protests. The other groups will try to follow them on a ferry, which could be quite interesting. We'll see how the police manage that. Now, the Iranian groups up in Trafalgar Square are saying they're going to be staying there throughout the whole day. They're going to have a coalition usually with Israeli groups too. The police will be managing that. But as I said, it's quite an interesting group of people here. We haven't seen any trouble just yet. They are meant to be gathering and kicking off at midday, so we will be here, of course, throughout the afternoon. Now, cast your minds back to the last couple of nights up and down the country. We've seen these groups, the anti-Islamist regime and the pro-Islamist regime, if that's what you want to call them, groups clashing up and down the country. Of course, a very, very heated time because we are now 7 days, a whole week since this war began. Now, many here in Britain are anti-war. We've seen polls come out saying British public don't want the war. But the Iranian groups here, many of the Iranians I've spoken to are very happy. They've been celebrating. They've been very joyous about all of this. And they've been actually crashing some of the pro-Islamist regime groups, which has ended up in some, let's say, fiery conversations and a little bit of police intervention. So I'm hoping we don't see any of that here today. Hopefully all the protests are peaceful. But of course, I'm going to be bringing you all of that throughout the afternoon. So stay tuned and I'll hopefully bring you some interviews. And of course, later on my show tonight, I'm going to bring you some exclusive interviews with some of the people here. I think you're going to find it very enlightening.
Alex Armstrong, thank you so much. And do stay tuned to GB News to watch Alex reporting on that protest throughout the day. I think we can expect a lot more of this on the streets of London in the coming weeks. If you remember what the state of London was like in the weeks after that October the 7th massacre, and I think we can expect to see this breaking out on the streets of London.
And Olivia, we're also going to see those protests outside RAF Fairford. It will be fascinating to see how public opinion tracks and changes as Britain gets more and more involved with this war. Those B-1 bombers landing at RAF Fairford for the first time in many, many years. British air bases are going to be a station for launching strikes on Iran. Could we be drawn in further? Could those protests surge? It's a very difficult time indeed.
Well, exactly. And we're joined now by Dawn Neeson, who's going to be presenting after us. Dawn, what have you got coming up for us on the show?
A great show from a very small chair. It has to be said. Thank you very much, Charlie. You're too generous. Obviously, we are covering. Yeah, too warm. We are covering the breaking story of the Ian Huntley thing, and I covered that story, and I can tell you what it was like there on the day and actually meeting Ian Huntley. It was awful. So we're breaking that story, covering that story, talking to people that worked on it at the time. Obviously, the situation in London, on the streets of London. I'm very interested in what's happening with the marches, so we're going to that live. Also, I've got an exclusive sit-down chat with Kemi Badenoch coming up.
Do you want to swap chairs now? I feel a bit sorry for you, sort of.
No, it's fine. I'll sit on your lap if you want, Charlie, but that's fine. We're
all close colleagues here at GB News.
In any case, it's a great show coming up. All of that.
Enjoy the weather.
After the
Bye,
weather.
folks.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Cloudy skies across much of England and Wales this weekend with some patchy rain in places, but also some glimmers of sunshine, especially across Scotland. We have this ridge of high pressure extending across the UK. A few weather fronts in the flow will bring some patchy rain in places. So for much of England and Wales, it's a cloudy, dull, murky day out there with outbreaks of rain. To the north, though, across the southern parts of Scotland and to the northeast, that's where we're going to hold on to some brightness today. Otherwise, for most places, temperatures are going to be around average for the time of year, but still chilly underneath this cloud, and especially the onshore flow across East Anglia and parts of Kent. So as we end Saturday then, we hold on to the clearest skies again, still across much of the east of Scotland and to the south of that. A weak weather front just flirting the Outer Hebrides to give some rain in places. Some early evening sunshine to the east of Northern Ireland. Otherwise, across England and Wales, it's another cloudy picture. As we head through Saturday evening then, this patchy rain across southern parts of Wales and the southwest will continue to push its way northwards, so more so affecting northern England as we head into Sunday. Otherwise, low cloud, mist and hill fog in the mix, but clearer skies again across the far north of Scotland and to the south. Here temperatures will fall away. We'll see a touch of frost in places, perhaps getting down to -4 degrees, otherwise 6 or 7 to the south. So another murky picture on Sunday across England and Wales, and more so seeing some patchy rain now across northern England. To the west, we do have this band of rain just coming into Northern Ireland, western Scotland, with again the best of the brightness really coming through into southern parts of Scotland. Otherwise, temperatures similar, but in any sunshine, highs of 14 to the southeast. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Everything you need to enjoy a super summer could be on us this year, as you could drive away with this very latest Benivan 4-berth camper van. This camper van is fully equipped with its own kitchen, bathroom, dinette and plenty of storage. We'll also get your summer sorted with a further £25,000 in tax-free cash that you could spend however you like. For another chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We love Great Britain. We love its history, its culture and its tradition, and that's why we're so proud to be part of GB News.
You look genuinely emotional. Oh, come here.
GB News does pay attention to those who are ignored by the mainstream media. The majority of this country whose forefathers fought and died to maintain liberty, to fight for freedom of speech.
The rule of law, the rights of property and democracy. This is the heritage that our country should be so proud of.
Which of course includes our Christian heritage. There's been a huge resurgence in the number of people going to church. Perhaps they're not finding what they're looking for, and they're looking